advocating, you're actually, I would argue that rights themselves, feminism is actually sexist, ironically, because feminism, assuming rights, assumes there's a body of men who are going to defend those rights. They don't have the obligation to do that.
I've been meaning to cover this debate, and so I'm going to do it today. Soy male feminist Oliver gets completely dominated by based Chad Jimbob in a debate on the Whatever podcast. Everyone's been talking about the Andrew Wilson debate that he had with Oliver, but not many people are talking about his debate with Jimbob here. And I'd like to change that because I think Jimbob did an excellent job. And Oliver, well, he's a male feminist. That tells you all you really need to know. So let's see how this debate goes down on the Whatever podcast.
If they have a majority of the weapons, we can imagine this.
Who builds weapons?
I mean,
mostly.
Why does it matter who necessarily wins?
Because hold on, it matters, Oliver, because I asked you, can you give me a hypothetical where women could express their feminism and exist in a feminist society or whatever you are envisioning without the men? The men are building these weapons.
Because the men have always built the weapons.
No, because it's not because
you're appealing to the past to justify what's happening now.
Do you own a weapon?
Appealing to the past.
Do you own a weapon?
Still happens now.
Like a firearm?
Okay, yeah.
No, I don't own a firearm.
Okay, so larger weaponry, even a firearm. Sure. The majority of a large portion of women can't even cock a gun. They can't clean a gun. They can't. Hold on. They can't break. Hold on. They can't break down a gun. Okay. And they can't carry larger equipment. So if you're arguing that the great equalizer is military equipment from small to large, that takes brute strength not only to make, but to maintain and to transport. And you're basically granting yourself that. You're just saying, like, look, Santa came. It wasn't the men who actually engineered and moved these large things around for us to use, right? Remote control bombing and whatnot, all these missile silos and whatnot. This requires massive amount of brute strength, right? You're just granting yourself the fruits of the brute strength in the hypothetical and saying, well, it could be the case that women could just find a pile of missiles in the woods and then it's the great equalizer.
That's not the argument. That
I'm saying without men, what does a collection of women do to sustain their...
What does a collection of weaker men do without stronger men?
No, I'm arguing for the stronger men.
Okay, so then your argument is basically that whoever is the strongest man out there, whoever has the most brute power right there, they are the ones who
dictate society.
Dictate society.
That's right.
So you are grateful then to men who are stronger than
patriarchy.
you.
Yes.
You are grateful to men that are stronger than you for enforcing it. So why should you necessarily have rights?
I don't believe in rights.
Okay. I mean, so why should your right to vote be protected? Why should
I don't believe in vote? I don't think I should vote necessarily, but certainly not women, because if you remember in my opener, would you agree that when a collective of
I don't think I should vote, but especially not the women. I know Jimbob doesn't believe that the only thing with Jimbob is the question I have with rights is like, I get what he means when he says he doesn't believe in rights. Like, he doesn't believe rights exist. And actually, I agree with that. Like, technically, yeah, they don't exist. They're man-made. But even if they're man-made, like if the government gives us rights or privileges, right? Maybe that's what he means. They're not rights. They're just privileges. I guess I answered my own question. We'll carry on.
Very strong men, stronger than me and you, right? The big burly ones with the cross-eyed, right? If they don't vote, would you agree that the alternative to voting would be just rebellion or brute force if they didn't agree with the government?
I mean, I think it still is. They can vote and they can still use brute force.
I'm saying that when I'm not saying they could vote. I'm not saying they can't vote and then suddenly be like, you know what? I know I voted, but I'm going to still do this. I'm saying, generally speaking, the act of voting for men collectively, aren't they saying I'm not going to rebel?
I don't think they're necessarily saying they're not going to rebel. They're saying that I would prefer not to. I think I can get what I want by not using.
Fair enough. I'll grant you that. It's just that if they prefer not to, I'm saying that the alternative is that they could, right?
Sure.
Okay. Women, if you switch it over to women, if women, they all start voting, right? Mm-hmm. What are they forfeiting?
What do you mean? What are they forfeiting?
If the man is forfeiting
I don't think he is.
He is. He's basically saying, I'm going to vote and I'm going to hope that the outsourced force application, which is the military and the justice system and everything else included, right? They're outsourcing their brute force. Now, if they disagree and they decide voting isn't for you anymore and you're going to start a rebellion, they could do that. What I'm asking you, Oliver, is can women do that?
I don't necessarily think that most women can, but I don't think most men can either. I don't think most men can.
It's not about
what you're doing is you're ascribing the quality of brute.
Well, I mean, especially maybe nowadays, maybe a majority of men can't nowadays. When if they're all soyed out like you, then maybe Oliver has a point.
Force to all men because they're a member of the category of male.
I am actually appealing to categories. I'm saying when it comes to categories, right? It's like saying this, like, are you in a category of beings that can think and do logic?
Yeah.
Can all human beings do logic?
Not necessarily. No.
But I'm appealing to the ones that can are in a certain category. What I'm saying is that category, Oliver, is men.
But no, not necessarily.
It's never a collection of women.
No, it could be young men. Why should old men get rights? Because young men are the ones that are defending them.
No, it's not. It's not that who gets rights. You're making an argument. You're the one affirming rights. I'm not, right? Your whole view on feminism, my counter to feminism isn't about rights. I don't even believe in rights.
Okay.
Your view is that women have rights. That's good. I'm asking you, well, why isn't it the case, you think, Oliver, that women gave themselves the right to vote? Why did they appeal to another body of people to get the right to vote?
Because they're the ones who controlled society. Like, I don't really know what.
But
I don't.
Correct.
But you're basically making a massive just is-ought distinction.
No, I didn't say ought.
The case, therefore,
I didn't say ought. I didn't say ought.
Then I can agree with your entire descriptive claim and say, yeah, then that's
so
how we should structure society.
Yeah, but if it's descriptively true that the ones you're going to be appealing to from the woman's perspective is always a collection of strong men, then your argument that you're making the normative statement that we ought to pursue feminism, that it's good for society. What I'm saying is that anything you call feminism actually affirms the patriarchy.
No, because you're defining patriarchy in terms of the enforcement arm that involves
What else could it be?
It's not because patriarchy, as I talked about before, is a bunch of different things
List
that come
one
together. Okay, I'm happy to go up
one at a time.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. It's
Notice Jimbob with the old school pen and paper, where Oliver has the digital iPad, huh? Generational divide there?
It's typically understood as a system that advantages men over women, granting them primary access across all domains of society.
Stop there. One at a time.
Okay.
Is brute strength an advantage over women?
It not necessarily. It can be, but it not always is the case.
Yeah, it is.
Is it
How is it not?
advantage over women?
It can be, but not all men are stronger than all women.
I understand. But generally speaking, if there's a collection of men and a collection of women, and there's the same amount of each, it's going to be the case that the collection of men, even if they're weak men, are going to be stronger than the women, right?
True.
Okay.
However, no. But
next on the list.
But this is important. You're assuming that all the men will necessarily agree to impose their will.
I'm not talking about what they're agreeing. I'm saying they could, not whether they agree.
And women could kill their children.
It doesn't matter. Then you don't have a society.
Okay, cool. So everyone could pursue their own self-interest. Society would implode, and where are we?
We're at liberalism. That's what feminism is.
Good job, Oliver. Good job, Oliver, making the point that we've been saying. Yes. Good job, Oliver. Debate over, right? I mean, he just kind of conceded there. Oh, wait a minute. This is a 4-hour debate. Almost 5 hour.
Pursuing your own self-interest and your wants. That's what you trained women to do under feminism.
Right.
Pursue your individualism. There's no greater obligation for women. Like, for instance, under feminism, is there any obligation to have children?
No. But there's no obligation for men to have children either.
Hold on.
Having children is not an obligation.
It depends on the worldview, but generally, just being a man, yes, you're not obligated.
Yes.
This is why the ought, which is your affirmative tonight, does require a meta-ethical position, right? Okay, that's what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
So under your view, if it's the case that feminism doesn't have an ought to have children,
yes,
is it a society better? Let's say there was a society without feminism, but it had it didn't affirm your idea of feminism, but it produced an ought statement of obligation to have children. Is that society better than the feminist one?
No.
Well, if it survives, is it better?
Not necessarily. I don't think a society surviving in which women have zero rights or zero, are not well off.
What's a right?
What?
Can you define a right?
An entitlement.
Entitlement. So are there any, if an entitlement, is that given to someone?
In a large sense, yeah.
Okay.
Men and women, it's given to them.
Who gives women entitlements?
Society.
Well, that's
Men.
pretty vague.
Well, it is society. We as a society decide on which.
Hold on.
entitlements
Let's
individuals have.
Let's look at the 19th Amendment for a second.
Okay.
When women started screaming, some of them, the minority, by the way,
Mhm.
were started screaming for the right to vote, right? Who are they screaming to give them the right to
The
vote?
people who were in power,
Who
who
are those
were
people?
men. Yeah, but you're just making a statement that was the case.
I'm asking you, why do they appeal to the men in power and not just give themselves rights?
Because those are the people that are in power. You're
Men.
asking, they were excluded from being in power.
So when is it where women will be in the power position where men are asking women for rights?
When there are women who are in power, do you think? Wait a second. If there is a female CEO and a man walks into her office and it's like, I would like a raise, is he not asking her to grant him some sort of privilege or some sort of benefit? Absolutely.
Yeah, but this is not the same category
Yeah,
as
it's
a
not the
raise
same
because the raise doesn't depend. Well, actually, it does. It depends ultimately on force, which appeals to men. So the question for you, Oliver, was
strong
this:
people. It appears to people who have the ability.
They always try to, like, the feminists always try to make it about people, men and women. It's people. It's like, no, it's mostly men because it's majority of men who are stronger than the majority of women. So you could try to make it about people as much as you want, humankind or people kind, as you want to call it, but it's men, to mankind.
People have the ability to enforce unjust or just laws.
Mm-hmm.
So when you want a just law, when a bunch of women, right, when they wanted the right to vote, they were.
I have to admit that Oliver is pretty sharp for such a young age. Wow. Well, Thor. Oliver's brother maybe in the chat, or cousin or something, family member?
Asking other people to give them the right to vote.
That's how all rights work.
I understand rights work because they're enforced by brute force every time.
Yeah, there requires enforcement.
So
all men don't enforce.
I know it's not about all men. It's that the fact that the people enforcing are going to be predominantly men. And if they were predominantly women, they couldn't enforce it. Let's switch it for a second. Hold on, let's switch it again. Men want the power, the right to vote, right? Let's switch the history, right?
Mm-hmm.
Men want the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
The enforcement are women as you see them today.
Not as we say today. If we want to flip the entirety of history. No. Wait a second.
We're not changing. We're not all else equals.
No. You can't do that.
No,
because that's not how society develops.
No, that's how a hypothetical works.
No, but you can't change the hypothetical and not change the relevant variables.
Look,
we would have to have society exist so that women over the entire course of history had built everything, had excluded men.
No, I didn't say men or women. I'm saying in this instance.
Okay.
Right. Well, that's the thing is you're actually agreeing with me that throughout history, why is it that men with the brute force built all of the things? Like everything you see, right? All of the big skyscrapers, the tunnels, the bridges, underwater welders, all of these things. Are you going to say that it just happens to be a social construct, that it happened to be men, or is that a feature of biology?
So first off,
well, answer the question, Oliver. Yeah, absolutely, it's true. It wasn't like we just all got together one day and divvied up everything. Like, okay, men, you could do the skyscrapers and be the underwater welders, and women, how about you be like the teachers and the nurses, and also especially the stay-at-home moms and the wives. It wasn't something that we just all came up with one day. That's just naturally what we're inclined to go toward.
I think that there's this general idea that men built society, and that women did not play an integral or fundamental role.
No one's saying that.
I would say that.
No, but
hold on, just let him finish.
Yeah, no, you're good. It's fine.
It's okay.
I'm fine with the back and forth. But yeah, so it's all good. Yeah. So what I'm saying here is that there were women who made very important advancements in almost every part of advancement of infrastructure, advancement of industry that you just don't know about. I have some examples that you'd like me to bring up.
Wait, no. An advancement, is that an idea?
His women history talking points.
Talk about individuals.
Okay, but this is a straw man. No, I didn't say they're not important. I didn't say women can't think of cool things. All right. We're talking about society. Let's say this city we're in right now. It's erected, maintained by mostly men.
Sure. Operating on what?
Brute force.
Not just brute force, organization and SIPs and ideas. It's based on ideas.
That's fine, but without the brute force, you can't have the management of the roads. For instance, this is why I talk about leverage, okay? Men who run the city, who actually use their force and their will to get in tunnels and get dirty and die doing these things, right?
Okay.
To maintain. If they suddenly said, no, I'm not doing this, do you really think women could just step in and do all the same work?
No, and I think that if women collectively decided they're not going to have children and kill themselves, men could step in and have the children.
Great.
So then this is an equivalent thing
No,
here.
you agree with me.
Women and men can both withhold something that is essential that they provide to society.
Oliver, you agree with me. The opening statement that I made was this. The leverage women have, the important aspect of women in society is being mothers and raising good human beings first and foremost.
No.
Yep.
Yes.
No, that is one of the things that they can do.
That's
not
the
Oh
most
my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oliver. Jeez. See, this is before it came out that Oliver could be that he was a alleged sex pest or whatever like that. I thought he was just a misguided young man. You know, one of these young people that have been brainwashed by the feminist machine into thinking, no, you know, women could just do much more. They could do anything they want. Yeah, you know, but it's not reality. I just thought Oliver wasn't living in reality because, I mean, listen to these, like listen to the way he talks and the points that he makes.
No,
what's the most important thing then under feminism?
The most important thing? People having the choice to do what benefits.
They don't have the choice.
What do you mean they don't have the choice?
What person has full choice in doing what they want?
None of us have choices then.
We don't.
We are all slaves to the person who's stronger than us.
That's right.
So then where does this get off the ground? All you're claiming is might makes right.
No, I didn't say right. I'm saying descriptively it's the case. I'm asking you from your perspective. If we agree that the leverage men have is brute strength such that they could basically hit a button called I'm not going to work tomorrow and the city collapses, and I asked you point blank, could women do the same job immediately and get the city moving again? You said no. But then you said
women could do the same thing.
But women could leverage their bodies, right?
Women could kill their children. I don't know.
That's right.
But what you're talking about? People have been put into spheres. Women have been designated to the domestic sphere, and men have been designated historically.
Is that a construct?
What
is that a construct?
I think largely it can be.
No,
yeah.
Is it?
I think in a certain sense it is, but there is. I'm not denying that men are stronger than women generally, and thus they have developed on different paths. But
right.
You're just claiming that because women are. I mean, in a certain sense, women. Having to be pregnant is a burden upon someone's body that affects their ability to contribute to society.
Oh my God, these feminists getting pregnant is a burden on a woman's body. Like these feminists, they really look at like getting pregnant as like, oh my goodness, like the same as getting cancer or something, you know? Why do we have baby showers? Why do we have pregnancy announcements then? If it's so horrible, you know, if it's just like, oh my gosh, if it's like getting cancer, and the only treatment is to get an abortion. Like that's what feminism has done. It's led to us. It's led to people like Oliver thinking of pregnancy as if it's the same as like you're just growing a tumor inside your womb or something like that. Like it's not something that's just that we do naturally to keep the human species alive.
In the same way, if women weren't like sidelined by pregnancy, then
by the way, it's sidelined by pregnancy. Okay, Oliver. And the way he says it too, it's a burden for women. It's a burden because it's stopping women from doing what? Oh, going to work. That's why.
then
so there's a biological aspect I agree with. Okay, we both agree there. The biological aspect of men collectively, not every individual man, but collectively, generally speaking, men are geared towards certain behaviors, certain work, certain kinds of things, high risk things. Women are geared more towards something else. And so if that's true, this is what I'm asking you, Oliver, under your feminist view that you're advocating for, saying feminism is good for society. If it's not the best thing for women under your vision of feminism, if it's not the best thing for women to be at home raising good human beings, using their top leverage, we both agree, one of their top leverage points is...
I don't think every man should become a boxer and beat the shit out of people.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. You don't need boxers for society. You need people.
With brute
Hold on.
force.
You don't need boxers for society. You need humans.
Okay, you do need humans.
Okay.
But you do need... You're saying that every man, therefore, would be better off utilizing their brute strength at all times.
Look, this isn't my positive position. I'm asking you under your feminist view.
Why do like these feminists like all of a sudden don't understand the difference between in general and every single person? You know, we're talking about in general, overall, not saying every single man has to be in construction and every single woman has to stay home and raise children. Like, no one's saying that. You're saying overall, though, what's better for society, general population. How come they don't understand that?
This view, which you're affirming tonight. So you're under cross-examination. So I'm just asking you a simple question.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not motherhood and raising the next generation of good humans, what is the higher obligation for women from a feminist view, from your view?
No one has an obligation to necessarily raise a generation. The reason is because, no, wait a second, I want to explain this because I think this is important and it's brought up a lot. Feminism has no obligations is something I've heard you say before. I don't think that's true. One of the obligations, or one of the things that's not an obligation under feminism, is to raise children, because no one has an obligation to do that. However, you will always have people who have children in a society because people want to have kids. That's just something that happens. So what we should do is we should incentivize people to have children by giving them the
government
most economic
programs,
resources available,
go.
the most personal freedom available, so that
Here
the
we
people
go.
can make those decisions. We should not go straight to let's force women to be in the home.
Nobody said force. Okay.
Well, you were using the force doctrine.
No. Just because
Force doctrine. Force doctrine. He's explaining. He's giving a descriptive. He's not advocating that we force women. That's not the same thing. Him explaining the force doctrine is not the same as saying, well, we should force women to do this or that or whatever. But that's another thing these feminists go to. It's like, well, we would have babies. We want to have babies, but there's not enough economic resources for us. So it's like, oh, in order for us to have, again, actually, Oliver kind of proving the point that they could hold children hostage and be like, give us more government programs or else we won't have babies.
Appeal descriptively to force doctrine is something that you cannot avoid in any paradigm. It doesn't follow that I'm advocating to force women to have children. I'm asking from your perspective, if feminism is good for society,
Yes.
and society requires both force and people, I'm asking, what's the obligatory position from your view that men and women have, and are they different?
They don't have distinct differences.
Okay, so if there's no obligations under feminism,
Not
don't
true.
have
There's
What's
not
one?
gender-specific
oh,
obligations.
so okay,
That's
so
different.
there's no obligation for men under your feminist
Protect
society
women.
to enforce rights.
There's wait, there is not an obligation.
Is that
No.
gendered?
No. There is not an obligation for individuals to enforce anything.
W. Jess
You don't
Gerald.
have to become a police officer.
So how could you argue what's good for society? X is good for society. Society has preconditions. You agree? When we refer to society, we're talking about an aggregate of people living in an ordered community, right?
I don't think society necessarily has to be ordered, but I would say that
Well, that's the
societies generally
definition.
are. Well, I'm give us the definition you're providing, but I don't think the society has to be ordered. There can be a society in chaos.
Well, to say it's in chaos means it's bordered. You could actually look at it and say that society's in chaos and this one's not.
Sure, I guess
So that's
then-
ordered.
No, you're defining ordered then as just distinct. Then
Well-
fine, sure. Societies are distinct and separate from each other.
That's fine. So, but if you're saying, aren't you arguing tonight that feminism would assume, if you thought it was good, that it would be ordered?
Sure.
Okay.
I
So
don't,
if feminism is good for society, and society, the way you're referring to it, is ordered, it requires force, which is gendered, and it requires duties that are tied to that force, which are gendered.
No.
Why? Yeah, because you're arguing for women's rights.
No, I disagree with the first part that this idea of enforcement is inherently gendered.
Give me a counterexample.
Yeah.
Men don't have to enforce the law.
That's right. Is that the society you want to live in?
Men will enforce law and women will enforce the law. People step up. Well, because you're arguing that if we don't tell people you have to enforce the law, you have to become a police officer,
with the
then
people,
no one will step
the
up and do that. I
people,
think we can
humans,
incentivize people and give them the
humans.
most freedom possible, and individuals will gravitate towards the industries and societies.
Okay, let me ask you a
that
different way. Is a society better? Let's say society A has built into its meta-ethical position that it has that men have the obligation to keep order with force, and then another society that doesn't have that obligation. Which society do you think is better?
Well, you're assuming in the first one that meta-ethical obligation would therefore entail that those people would follow that, right?
Well, yeah. Well, the obligation would include potential legality, but more so maybe social pressure of obligation. If that exists, let's say it was a society that appealed to women's rights, and there was an obligation for men to defend women and protect their rights, versus your feminist, hypothetical society that doesn't have any obligations ultimately. Well, what's one obligation?
I think people should defend those who are more vulnerable than they are.
Women.
No. But women aren't just those who are more vulnerable, because of course we can see that there are women who are stronger than men.
Mm-hmm.
We can see that there are young men who are stronger than
disabled
older men.
Particulars.
We can see,
older men.
Of course we should talk about particulars.
Well,
you are talking about, you're kind of making men and women out to be this homogenous group that
Well,
they're kind of exist in separate domains, and that's just not.
Well,
Dude,
no.
how many more times?
No, it does.
How many more times do people like Andrew Wilson and Jimbob have to explain this? Like what are they not understanding about this? Like, they don't get it. They're saying in general, it's up to the men, and the men in general have the power of the force. And no, I don't mean Star Wars. I just mean they in general have the brute strength. In general. What don't they understand about generalities?
It is how it works, and I'm demonstrating that generality is a perfectly fine thing to do. I mean, you can take a bunch of particulars, add them up, and come up with a generalization. That's just basic induction. So inductively, isn't it the case that it's best? It seems to be the best
Oliver's thinking of something.
way to do it. That men, it just happens to be the case that men are in the positions to enforce and defend and go to war. Why is it that men and women have different prison systems?
Why do men and women have different prison systems? I'm fully in favor of that.
I know, but couldn't you say, Your Honor, there are some women who are stronger than men, and there are some men, and vice versa and stuff, and appeal to these particulars. But isn't it the case that a prison system is a perfect example of the generality that I'm actually arguing from?
Sure, but now you're making ought claims. On what basis are you making ought claims?
I didn't make an ought claim.
Well, then you're saying men and women ought to be in different.
I said descriptively the case. There's a reason why they are.
But that reason is based in an ought claim. Of course it is.
Do we have a duty to keep women away from outside of men's prisons?
Do we have a duty?
Yeah.
I mean, I think a society should.
From your point of view,
I don't think that.
Come on, Oliver, just say yes.
What you're doing is you're specifying duties.
The answer is yes. Keep women out of men's prisons and keep men out of women's prisons. Bada bing, bada boom. Why couldn't you just say that?
Really specifically, the duty is not to keep women out of men's prisons. The duty is to keep vulnerable people who are more vulnerable.
Women, yeah,
not
exactly.
Always necessarily. I don't think.
Dude. And I like how Oliver, you could tell he tried to be as careful as he could to word it, because he knew that what he was going to try to say, because what he was trying to say is we have a duty to protect women, pretty much. Protect women. And why do we have to protect women? Well, because in general, men are stronger than women. That's why. So we have a duty to kind of be more protective of women. He was trying to carefully word that, and good on Jimbob for catching that.
I think we should
Who commits more aggressive acts against?
Of course, it's men. I'm not arguing that it's not men, but I think that in principle we should keep a very a man that is weaker away from a woman who is a serial killer.
Well, that's a particular. I'm talking about prisons, though.
Yeah.
So why is it in your ideal feminist society? Why is it that if you're fighting for equality, why is it you still have separate prisons?
What do you mean? I'm not. Well, here's the thing that I put in my feminism thing. We're not denying that there are disparities or differences. We don't deny that there's disparities or differences between groups of men. That doesn't mean that we think that.
I still ask you why, though.
What?
The question was, why in your society are you obligated, from your perspective you're arguing tonight, to keep prisons separate?
Wait, who is obligated? Society as a whole?
Is your ideal society? Look, it's Oliver's world right now. Oliver is saying feminism is good for society. That means there's a type of society that appeals to feminism and practices it. I'm asking you from an outsider. Pretend I'm like I'm visiting, and I'm like, why do you guys separate your prisons? What's your answer?
I think we should largely separate prisons because there are differences between men and women. And I think that men, if men are, especially men who are violent, especially men who are in prison, who have shown a lack of care for the safety of those around them, I think we should also ensure that men aren't hurting other men in prison either.
So now he has to pivot a little bit and go, well, I also don't think that men should be hurting other men either. I mean, I don't know. I don't think you're going to be seeing Oliver here advocating that, oh man, we need to solve the prison grape crisis that goes on in men's prisons. He's probably going to harp more on and on about, the 1 in 4 college students get SA on college campuses. So I call BS on that, but he brings that up because, of course, he wants to pivot away from Jimbob's correct point that we have to protect women because women in general are weaker than men.
I don't know.
So now I'm going to ask you, if you argue that women are generally collectively more vulnerable than men, and that's why it's a good reason. I'm not arguing that there aren't some weak men that could be protected from stronger men, but we're talking about male, female here.
Why though?
Why are we talking?
Why don't we go? Because you are creating two categories, and I'm saying that
do they exist?
Of course, the categories exist, but you are making the claim that because Y is weaker than X, right? As a general rule. As a general rule, Y is weaker than X. Therefore, we have an obligation. We should, have separate, prisons or something like that. Why can't we do that intragender, if that makes sense?
Well, if you agree that there's a good reason to have women and men's prisons separated, then I'm going to ask you where you no longer follow that rule outside of the prison.
What do you?
I'm asking, where else in society are you willing to separate the women for the same reason?
Willing to separate women for the same reason?
Yeah.
I don't know.
For instance, let me give you a particular example. Is it better in your ideal feminist society that a weak woman is at home with her children and her husband at 11:30 p.m. or signing out of her penthouse office with her lanyard coming down the elevator at 11:30 p.m., potentially the victim of a male crime?
I think you are reducing what is best for women like a homogenous level or a group that's going to be best
just one
for
example.
No, I don't.
What's better?
Well, you're saying what's better because you're assuming that this woman is going to be assaulted or something.
Well,
like that.
no,
I would rather not have a woman get assaulted, of course.
Hold on. What's more likely, though?
No, but the solution to that problem is not to say, okay, we need to keep all women in the home because men can't stop raping them. That's not really how we should operate. Society.
Well, actually, the fact that it's mostly men raping women goes to my point that the specific argument tonight, it comes back to the force doctrine every single time. It's never the case where you're going to be collectively writing rules and basically making society around this view that we should protect men from women ever, right?
We should protect men from everyone.
But no, I'm saying generally speaking, we don't structure society in a way that gears toward the concern of women aggressing men. It's usually the other way around, right?
I mean, I think we should do both. I don't know. I feel like a consequence of the patriarchy and these norms that we have is that men can't be victims of abuse. Men can't be physically abused by women, and I think that's a problem. We should not have that. If a man is is subject to persistent physical abuse, that should be taken seriously by a woman.
Do you think that with enough manpower we can take down the patriarchy?
With enough manpower? I think with enough societal organization, with enough I don't know. Yeah, work, we can do it, of course. We can restructure society. Of course we can restructure society.
So with enough manpower, we can restructure away from the patriarchy.
With enough change, we can get away from the patriarchy. I don't know, like, you're arguing that, like, because men have to do it, therefore it's invalid or something.
Well, that's kind of what I'm asking is, like, if I ask someone with enough manpower and resources, could you take down the thing that's literally going to be mirroring what you're aggregating in resources? In other words, to take down the patriarchy, you need to find a bunch of strong people to fight against this bunch of strong people.
Yeah.
And the bunch of strong people you're going to find are going to look exactly like the collection of people you're going to be fighting against. So
sure,
it's never the case where you go, let's revolt against this tyrannical body of men who are impeding on our rights. You never go out and knock on the doors and grab the women first.
in order to fight? Or,
Yeah.
Sure. What you also wouldn't grab weak men. Like,
well, no, you would.
You would.
Why not?
No. Why? Because
they're still
yeah, I mean, weak men over weak women. I mean, the example Jimbob just, like the hypothetical Jimbob just brought up right now. I mean, that's what's going on in Ukraine. In the Ukraine, they were literally like kidnapping men off the streets to go fight the war against Russia. They weren't kidnapping women. They weren't going to the women first. They were going to the men. And there were older men. Like, they didn't discriminate because, you know, the men still had a better chance at fighting against Russians than the Russian men, I might add, than the women.
Stronger than the women.
Not
if it,
no. You're saying I think the echelon of, like, weakest men out there would absolutely be less strong than.
I mean, like, if you had a choice of getting like a 55-year-old man against a young 22-year-old woman, you're still going to pick the man over the woman because still overall, like, those men are stronger
than the average woman.
I'm not sure if you take the same body frame, if you knock on a door,
well, no, okay,
and it's like the same height, right, and even weight, if you're gonna go to war, you're gonna grab the dude. It's not just because of force, though. Would you agree that men are more likely to exert aggression, even for bad reasons, than women?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so if you're going to war, you would want someone who is able, capable, and willing to exert their aggression on another aggressor. Whereas if it's generally the case, women are a little more timid.
Why are they, though? Why are they more likely to exercise their aggression?
I think it's biology.
I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's the case.
Do you have a son?
Do I have a son? No, I don't.
I do.
Okay.
So are you saying that?
Well, you're raising your son, though.
Well, no, I'm saying that.
Of course, your son's going to reflect your worldview.
Well, no. A 3-year-old, and even beforehand, you're going to notice when you become a father, God willing, which is anti-feminist. You're going to see that there's a clear distinction between boys and girls in their very instinct and the way they even behave and express themselves. And the aggressive ones, the males, are aggressive. You just see it right in front of you.
That is not necessarily the case for all boys whatsoever.
I didn't say all.
No,
I
said
generally.
See, they keep switching between all and they keep switching it to all. Like, do these people really not understand generalities, or are they just pretending to? Like, why do they keep pivoting to all? You guys, remember, hashtag not all.
Generally speaking.
Wait, but you're also raising your son specifically. Everything you do is in a gendered sense. You're raising your son to be what your version.
You don't think we should affirm gendered society?
I don't necessarily think we should tell people that there's a correct way to be a man or a correct way to be a woman. So no, I don't think that we should raise our sons to be aggressive, to show their, like I don't know, like that aggression is a good way to.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between, like, telling your son, hey, son, if someone has something you want. So, for instance, that weaker boy over there, that younger boy, if you want his juice box, go ahead and just go take it from him, force doctrine. Like, there's a difference between teaching them that and then teaching them principles or at least, teach him how to hone his aggression to where he could use it in position in situations where he might have to defend himself. So if someone wanted to take his juice box, he is equipped to defend himself in those situations. And I like how Oliver's kind of trying to imply like that Jimbob like teaches his kid to be like violent or something like that. That's not what Jimbob's saying.
Get what you want or something like that.
Well, I'm not saying that, but ultimately aggression and violence is an excellent way to get what you want. It works better. It's more critically,
Sure.
it's a critical path.
Would you rather your son, primarily when he has a disagreement with someone, like at school or something like that, get into a fist fight with the kid? Or would you rather have him have the communication skills to be able to talk that disagreement out?
Oh my goodness. Oh, that was so gay, Oliver. So gay. Would you rather he have the conversation skills to talk his way out of it? Maybe they could start a nice dialogue. Wouldn't you rather teach your son how to get some kombucha and have a nice little discussion circle, pass back the talking stick where he tells his feelings, you tell your feelings? Like, that is such a feminized way to handle it.
Well, in that instance, the ideal is to keep them in a system, right? Than to fight. We're not talking about whether or not violence is useful every time. Now, just
exactly.
Change
and it's also not saying we should just always resort to violence every time. But it's definitely not. Well, why don't you rather teach them the conversation? Because basically why I say that is not everyone's going to want to talk about their feelings, Oliver. Not everyone's going to want to talk it out. Even if you wanted to talk it out, the other person might not want to talk it out. So what do you do in that situation? At the very least, you should be able to learn how to at least defend yourself. Because not everyone falls into the whole, let's just have a little talking circle and discuss our feelings session, Not everyone's going to go for that.
No,
is it more often useful or
we're talking about maintain.
No.
The reason this came up is we're talking about maintaining society. For instance, let's take another thing. Would I rather the security guard at my school use force to stop an aggressor or talk to them nicely like the teacher does?
So wait, it would depend on the situation because
That's right.
But I do absolutely think that in a lot of these situations, de-escalation can be effective and be more effective than just
violence is great de-escalation.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Are
you serious?
No, wait a second. You're one, assuming that the violence will be successful in its aim, and two, that it won't have other ramifications. I think a society that always deals with its problems violently will actually have worse consequences. I don't think we should.
Again, Oliver, but in the real world, though, not everyone is bringing up their kid or bringing up people to talk about their problems. That's not how everyone's being brought up. There are some people who are brought up using force to get what they want. That's how they're taught. That's how they learned, or that's just how they naturally learn. Sometimes they learn to use force to get what they want. So I think, wouldn't you think that it's more valuable to teach people that sometimes force is necessary, at least in order to defend against the people who only know how to use force to get what they want?
We should encourage kids to beat the shit out of
Nobody's
each other.
saying that.
No one's saying that.
No, I'm not.
Violence is a very effective way to get what you want.
I didn't say they ought. I described that it is. You keep confusing ought and descriptions.
No, but first off, I actually don't think it is, because it can become self-defeating. If your way of always resolving conflict is resorting to violence, people will be less likely to associate with you. People will be less likely to be around you. Yeah.
Really? Okay. So, but if you extrapolate that out, because we're talking about societies right now, is society better with feminism? Is feminism good for society, right?
Yes.
The reason this is such an important topic, this violence and force aspect, is because society itself, no matter how you try to poetically describe your vision of feminism, it's always going to be reliant on the threat of force. And so at this mass scale level, Oliver, you're going to be an advocate for a pointing gun, right, at the society and saying, if you aggress over here, force is going to come in. That's what the violation of a right is, right?
I don't think that's how I would want society to be.
You don't want, if you want society with rights, which is in your opening, feminism, individuals having the same equal rights, equal opportunities. If you want that, you have to enforce it.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
If you want that and you have to enforce it, you need to appeal to inequality. It's a contradiction.
What do you mean you have to appeal to inequality? Everyone has to appeal to inequality all the time in
No,
order to get what they want.
specifically with sexes.
No, wait a second. No, because then every man has to appeal to someone who is stronger than him.
Who's a man?
Unless okay, then all men are at the mercy of the man who is stronger.
That's right,
than them.
patriarchy. That's descriptively case. Now that you admit that that's actually true, and I conceded that that's true.
Why does that matter?
I'm saying it matters because if you advocate for a feminist society, you're actually, I would argue that rights themselves, feminism is actually sexist, ironically, because feminism, assuming rights, assumes there's a body of men who are going to defend those rights. They don't have the obligation to do that.
That's true.
Of course, people have an obligation to defend those.
Under feminism, why?
Why?
Yeah.
I just think in general, everyone should have an obligation to defend those.
Who cares what you think?
Sure. If you don't have any sort of empathy or care for anyone else other than yourself,
empathy isn't it, dude. I've seen a video you did. Empathy is an involuntary signal that is perhaps what someone else is experiencing. That doesn't tell you what you ought to do. You're in a debate now arguing feminism is good for society. I bring in what's necessary to keep the good in society and highlight force. I ask you point blank under your feminist view, do men have the obligation morally, ethically, to uphold law that provides the playground you call feminism, feminist freedom?
They're men. Society in general has an obligation, I guess, to maintain itself.
Okay.
But it doesn't follow from that every man has an obligation to uphold society.
I didn't say every man.
Well, then this doesn't have any bearing.
It does have bearing because we're talking about a collective.
Which is between in
right?
general.
We're choosing
generalities
the people
and
who
every single person,
right
the
now.
individual.
Let's choose the stronger men. Let's choose.
There's a bunch of strong men right now.
Let's choose the men that can actually enforce.
There's a bunch of men right now who are really strong.
Yes.
They're in uniforms.
Yes.
Yep. They have to be trained. They're in uniforms.
Sure.
Cops, probably too unhealthy for my taste. But let's just say they're all fit.
Okay.
They're in a position where they come in and there's a man or a woman being aggravated, assaulted by someone.
Okay.
Under your system of feminism, because it has to be from a feminist view, why does the collective of mostly men who are the enforcement arm, why do they have an obligation to defend anybody?
Because you shouldn't want to see people hurt. Like I don't know how to. I don't know how to.
That's like saying you should like licorice ice cream.
No, I don't, because I think seeing someone suffering and wanting that not to exist is different than ice cream flavor.
No,
what do you like?
No.
I think you're appealing to an ultimately morally relativistic
you're
idea.
acting.
No, you are. You're appealing to this idea of moral relativism.
No, it's your view.
No, it's not my view.
Of course it is.
I am not a moral relativist.
You have to be.
No, I don't have to be. Absolutely not.
Okay, how do you?
Would you like me to tell you how I?
Why is feminism morally good?
Why is it morally good? So we can appeal to, for example, I think that moral objectivism can be defended on the basis the same way that what is it called? Epistemic objectivism can be defended. Basically, this idea that I know that the world around me exists. How do I know that the world around me exists? Do I really know that the world around me exists?
No, I wouldn't grant that, but go on.
Okay, well, so we don't really. We're trusting our senses to tell us that the world around us exists. I'm intuitively trusting that you are sitting in front of me with a microphone. I have a microphone. Mm-hmm. I have my iPad, a glass of water here, all of that. I could be wrong. I could indeed be wrong. I could be a brain in a vat, but I'm trusting my intuitive sense that my senses are telling me correct information.
I'm going to grant you an escape from solipsism. I'm going to grant you your sense data. How do you get a moral statement from sense data?
Because moral statements largely are sense-based. I can't give you you can't really give me moral objective.
Look at you and Jim. I was like, wait, what? Sense-based? I don't agree. Well, I mean, under that worldview that it's sense-based, that's what allows morality to shift under liberalism. It's because morality kind of changes with whatever the senses tell you in the generalities of society. So if all society, one day said, oh, I don't know, wearing shoes is immoral, well, then all of a sudden your senses are going to tell you, oh, yeah, that's immoral. But then in another 20, 30 years, it could be that, shoes are actually moral again. And then, everyone's back to wearing shoes. You know what I mean? Like, it's not senses. We shouldn't just leave it to your senses because that's how we get this shifting morality in society under liberalism is because, oh, we just depend on the senses.
Objectivism either.
Wait. My view's not on the chopping block.
Well,
You're
why
the
can't it
affirmative.
be?
You're the affirmative. We can get into it, but the affirmative is feminism is good for society. That's what you came today, right?
It leads to people having better lives.
Let's say my view, Christianity, what if it was just terrible for society? It still wouldn't change the position you're in. You would have to argue why feminism is good for society.
Sure.
So if you're going to sense data and you're saying, well, I use sense data to navigate the world, and I evaluate the sense data.
It also tells me murder. It also tells me unjustified killing is wrong.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Look,
why doesn't it?
Does your eye tell you that this is black?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So black has a frequency, a reflective aspect of light.
Sure, I could be wrong.
Yeah, right. But the frequency exists, right?
The same frequency of having an intuition on a
Just-
moral
yes
level.
or
No. Hold
What's
on.
the relevant
Hold on
difference?
a second. The reason I asked about the microphone is that black, red, the spectrum of colors, the frequency of light that all comes from white, it reflects differently. And so that maintains, even if you and I see things slightly different, the thing that
What if I say it's not black?
that maintains, well, I would say it's
What if I say it's not
a dark
That microphone is not black.
gray.
Okay, then what if I say that it's white?
You could understand, well, if you said it was
white.
white, said it was white, then we would appeal to some other people's views.
So we can appeal to other people's views. So if
That's
one person,
sense data.
No, if one person says that murder is okay and
No.
everyone else disagrees and says that it's wrong, we can appeal to them and say you're wrong.
Wait
So
a second.
In the same way that I would
Wait a
say that that's
second.
white.
No.
Are you arguing? So wait, how is that not subjectivism from your
Yeah.
position?
What do you? I think that it is as objective as we can get.
Oh, so you're saying it's not objective?
Well, because I don't think we can have 100% certainty.
This is what I'm asking you.
I don't think we can have 100% certainty on anything.
Where in the instance of a person deleting another person where in the sense data itself,
Sure.
the person is a size, they have hair, they have a shirt on or not, these are all features of reality that you're pointing to the external world. Where in that are you perceiving morality?
Where am I perceiving morality? The sense that I get, the intuitive sense that I get out
But
of it.
it's not the sense data, though.
It can be, absolutely. I would see it. Wait a second. No, hold on. I would see
Is this
someone-
moral?
Wait, what?
Is this moral?
Having water,
This cup, can you determine this cup, is it moral or not?
if you were to throw it at me, I could.
No, it wouldn't be the cup that was immoral.
Yeah.
Sure, it wouldn't. But what would matter about that?
So what I'm pointing to is you said, because now we're in meta ethics, because if you're saying feminism is good for society, if you're saying it's good for society, you're making a meta ethical statement about the good. I'm asking from your view what grounds the good, and you said sense data. So, but the thing is,
Sense
you can't
data.
point to anything in the world that occurs as an event and look at the event itself and
Morality.
retrieve empirically
Why not?
the good.
Why not?
Well, you're claiming it. How? Where is
How?
it?
I see something happen.
That's what, no, that's why he's bringing up, is the cup moral or not? No, it's just a cup, and it is absolutely subjective. If Jimbob were to throw the cup at Oliver, unprovoked right now, some people would be like, yeah, that was awesome when Jimbob threw that cup. But obviously, people on Oliver's side would be like, dude, what a dick Jimbob was, Maybe even objectively, outside people might be like, dude, that was totally unprovoked. That was a dickhead move by Jimbob. However, the fact that there's going to be a lot of people that are like, oh my God, that was so funny when he threw that cup at Oliver, it shows that morality is subjective.
Something happened, and I have an intuitive sense about it.
Okay, someone sees something else and they have an intuitive sense that it was justified, and you disagree.
Okay, absolutely. And
Whose
you could,
wins?
No, wait a second. But that's the same problem empirically.
No,
if I say that's
it's
white.
not.
If I say that's white, and you say
That's
it's not,
not.
how are they? How are they?
That's not the same.
But how are they different?
Because
Explain to me.
this is actual sense data.
No.
This is actual sense data.
Sure.
The opinion about what this is not whether or not it's good or not. This is ought. This is Hume's guillotine. This is like describing things into the good, right? This is a philosophical problem that you can't bridge.
No, is ought. I get the is ought for it.
Right,
I know
but
that.
why would, if you know that, why
I'm
would
aware
you?
of that, because at some point you have to assert a moral claim that you can't further back up. They have to bottom out somewhere.
So
They have to bottom
then
out
Oliver,
somewhere.
why would you even use sense data? Why don't you just say, regardless of seeing anything, I have a feeling. What if someone described something you didn't see anything
Well,
and you
sure,
got a
but
feeling?
wait a second, but that's still sense data. You hear it from them, you
Okay.
hear their story, you hear that, it evokes a response in you. So yeah, and then that's the
it?
response.
Okay. So
The same way I see that.
okay. Then how do you argue with, let's say, a nation predominantly held like a Christian view that feminism was immoral and they outnumbered you? Would you
Well,
just submit?
No, you can't. Well, you can't. You just make fine. Then yeah, whoever has the most power automatically wins.
You mean force?
But that's a descriptive claim. Of course, whoever has the most power is in holding all else equal, mind you. We have to hold everything else
Okay.
equal in that scenario because
All of this just to get Oliver to admit, oh, well, of course. Like, okay, man, why would we have to spend like a whole hour pretty much just trying to get Oliver to say that? Look at this. Look how long it took us to get here.
because just having brute force doesn't necessarily mean you are going to win.
Well,
Not necessarily.
For the most
if
part,
someone's better organized, if they have better access to resources,
they would still need some aspect of force to
but not.
to push
But
against
it's
you.
not ultimate. It's not like we don't add up who has the most strength and least strength and then determine that's what's going to happen.
If you agree that if you have a feminist view and I have an anti-feminist view, the ultimate descriptor, I'm not saying might is right. I'm saying might is. It just is.
And I don't disagree with you.
So if might just is, and we both agree that might is in fact a gendered statement, I'm arguing that feminism itself relies on a view, it relies on a part of reality that's antithetical to the ideal of feminism. That feminism itself, in practice, rights, privileges, all of these things you're adding to women, right, in their life that they are granted by stronger people that are merely allowing them to have them.
Fine, then that's the same thing.
That's a patriarchy.
No, wait a second. No, wait. You can make the same argument within a gender. You are separating it into men and women. Why can't I divide men up and say that? Yeah,
we do.
Stronger men. Okay, well then I don't.
That's in favor of a patriarchy, though. If men win against other men, it's still a patriarchy.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't base it on the enforcement.
Oliver,
mechanism.
I just want you to concede. If men take over other men, it's still a patriarchy.
That's not what defines patriarchy because it's not the enforcement. It's not what men could do that defines whether it's a patriarchy. The same way we are not a militaristic state, authoritarian state, just because the military could, if they want, overthrow democracy.
Well, no, they're allowing it not to be.
Sure. So then are we?
It's an allowance.
Wait a second. No, fine. Then would it be correct to describe our country right now as a militaristic authoritarian regime?
Potentially, I would say that rights themselves are fairly authoritarian, just to assuming them. Well, like for instance, people say often, maybe you've argued with Theus Oliver, where you're like, I'm totally fine with what you believe, just don't force your beliefs on me, right? Have you said that to someone?
No, I haven't.
Okay, but you heard someone say that, right?
I have. I think it's stupid.
Right. Do you agree that you would? It's actually probably a good thing to force your beliefs on people.
No, I think it would depend on what you mean, but I think
it's funny. Yeah, Oliver says, "Well, that's stupid." You know, I think it's stupid. But then when Jimbob phrases is like, "Okay, well, sometimes you think it's a good thing to force your beliefs on people," Oliver's like, "Well, I don't know about that." And then now he's going to go into his explanation about why. It's like, dude, come on.
But I think saying if someone believes something, I don't know why they wouldn't want to, if they believe it to be correct.
Right.
I don't know why they wouldn't want to share that belief and have others adopt what they view as the true.
Well, not even belief. Share. Let's say I agree with you. If you understand, if someone held a belief and they truly believed it, not only would they want to share that belief and have other potentially believe it, but meet others who already believe it. The next step would simply be, why wouldn't they, I don't know, take positions of government and legislative office seats and say, well, I love my view so much and I've gained so many people around me who love my view. Why wouldn't I just use the enforcement arm? Isn't the ultimate goal here, like even in this debate,
like pizza, or if I love pizza, I want to bring the government into.
Yeah, that's superficial.
No, it's not, because it's the same similar type of view.
No, I mean, it's already going on right now. Like, what do you think we've had to deal with in the last, 10 years or so? Dealing with pretty much liberalism being forced upon us. Liberalism, wokeism, whatever you want to call it, libtardism, that stuff's kind of been forced upon us. And the government had kind of, even in areas where government can't really enforce, they found loopholes in order to kind of get their way with people, to get people to do what they want and to believe what they want. They also use shaming tactics. They use propaganda, so that way others can shame and distance themselves from people who might believe wrong, think, if you will. It happens all the time, and it happened the last 10 years or so.
You could extrapolate it that far if you want.
And that would be ridiculous. Would you say it's ridiculous for someone who's like, I like pizza this much. I like cheese pizza. I would like everyone to like cheese pizza. If people don't like cheese pizza because I think it's correct and I think it's the best type of pizza, I'm going to enforce everyone to eat cheese pizza.
No, regardless if I want that, I'm saying that that's actually possible.
Yeah, but we would look upon that person as what? Like,
that's fine if you. No, but
it
that's
would be weird.
No,
I mean,
yeah, but
remember when there was a push to get like veganism out? Like there was a push to like the fake meat, the vegan meat patties and all that shit. I mean, it kind of like happened already. It's kind of happened. Like I said, it happens all the time.
I understand. We both agree that would be weird. I'm not debating whether or not we agree on things that are weird. What we're debating tonight is like the foundation of feminism rests on something that's counter descriptive to feminism.
No.
Yes. If feminism, look, I'll do it again. Feminism is the movement away from men in power. Is that better than patriarchy?
It's the movement away from
men in power.
Men inherently having power.
Dominant. Yeah, the dominant collective.
Because they're men. Women being excluded from that.
Women's rights is a feminist movement.
Sure.
Okay. So if women's rights is a feminist movement away from the movement of men in power, why does women's rights require the thing that they're opposing?
Wait.
Got him.
Because just because someone has power doesn't mean they're exercising it against you. Like I don't see like you're saying
no, Oliver. He's saying that if feminism is fighting for women's rights, but they depend on men or the patriarchy for these rights, why are they fighting against the very group of people that they have to appeal to for rights? That's going to grant them these rights.
Like there's always going to be a man in charge. Therefore,
there's going to be a collection in a society that's ordered, that has any kind of law or say rights, which are privileges or entitlements without any duties. In this case, feminism is a movement away from men in power. Women's rights is a feminist movement, supposedly against this power structure, and yet it's not
against men though.
I know, but it's not against men. No, you got to follow this line though. I'm not saying they hate men or whatever. I'm saying that the actual movement to affirm and defend and protect rights, they're asking daddy. They're asking daddy for an allowance.
No, they're asking society in general.
No, society's opinion doesn't matter when the force comes in.
Sure, the force does come in, but
it's the only thing we're talking about.
I agree, but here's the thing that I'm running into.
The
problem is you were assuming that men will act this way, that men will do this, that men will act as a collective to enforce their will necessarily.
I'm saying that
I
think socialization. Look, I don't think we automatically tell.
Let's say if somehow let's just say we gave women all the power, right? Or like, okay, we replaced all the men in government and stuff like that with all women. And let's say women change things and it's like, yeah, we're going to throw this constitution out. It's going to be because it was man-made or whatever. And we're going to enforce our rules. And our first day on the job, what we're going to do is we're going to make men locked up in cages and we're going to only use them to, I don't know. They're just going to be locked up in cages. We're going to imprison all men. How are they going to enforce that? Why wouldn't men just be like, no, we're not doing that? And then what army what army are they going to get to enforce that? Because what if all the men in the army, or even majority of the men in the army, are like, yeah, we're not enforcing this. Sorry. What are they going to do? Who are they going to appeal to then? They can't do anything. We could just take the government right back then and be like, all right, guys, we've had enough of your shit. So we're back in charge. What can women do to stop it? And even in that scenario, it would require us giving them the power. They wouldn't just be able to take it.
I don't think we should, and I hope you're not raising your son to say, if someone has a toy and you really want that toy.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oliver with the whole, I hope you're not raising your son to do that. I wonder if he's doing this for the clips. Throwing out your son card.
Boy, go over there and take it from him.
Depends what the toy is. That could be good for them, actually. You know what I mean? Like, it could be good for you and me. Look, let's just hypothetically.
Hold on, Oliver. You're making generalized statements all the time.
Oliver, is it possible that there's an instance of necessary growth of boys battling it out?
Sure, of course, but we're talking in generalities, because you're saying that I can't appeal to the fact that there are men that are weaker than women to invalidate the claim that, like, this force doctrine
wasn't your question, well, just because a collective of men could take over, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that men will take over.
Yeah, they won't.
You ever debated anarchists?
I have not. I mean, I've heard their
okay.
Position,
I want to put this on you. Pretend you and I are debating against a third person who's an anarchist for a second. We're on the same team for a second. And I ask them, why do you think anarchy is possible? And they say, well, because most people are passive and don't want to, use their force and their will to control people. Mm-hmm. And then they ask me, why do you think anarchy doesn't work? I answer the same exact thing. Because most people don't use force, but the small group that does want to use their force, they will.
Yeah, exactly.
Why can't there be another group that uses their force contrary to that?
That's why they made up of men.
Yeah,
sure.
Okay,
some of them can be, and some of them
patriarchy for the win.
No, but that's not how we should define what a society is, just by who makes up the majority.
Define a society.
Whatever ordered thing you.
Is that fine with you? You can come up with one that you like better.
I don't find it can be ordered. I agree that there has to be some sort of order to society. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Now, would you agree that order supposes force?
I guess the threat of force, sure.
But the threat has to be able to be actualized, right? Ultimately. Like if you call their bluff over and over.
Sure, yeah, fine. It has to be actualized.
This is what I'm saying. And I don't know how many more times I can drive this home, is that your vision of feminism being rights, equal opportunities, you're basically saying society is in a place where females should be more liberated to be in all sorts of different areas. Okay, that's what you're really arguing. You're arguing that society is essentially, which I kind of agree, is an amusement park that's already been built and maintained largely by men, right? You're just adding a police element. And what you're saying is feminism is Disney World. They should be able to ride on every ride. And then I go,
no, everyone should have access to the rides.
I know, but who enforces that everyone has access to the rides? Men.
It's society in general, and you are right that it is primarily going to be men.
So would you concede that your vision of feminism actualized requires something antithetical to feminism?
No, it is not antithetical, because just saying that men should do the right thing and men should be in favor of these things is not against feminism. I don't see how that's against
No, I didn't say should. I said, well, that's your other problem, is do they have an obligation? But the bigger problem is it actually a necessity that men collectively defend women's rights?
I think it is a necessity that society defends the rights of those who are less vulnerable.
You keep saying society. It can't be random people in society.
Yeah. You're right. Sure.
Okay. Would you concede for the audience then that your vision of feminism requires by necessity the actualization and the threat of stronger people who are predominantly men?
Sure.
Okay. So feminism requires men in power.
Feminism requires men to support feminist goals.
In power. It's an allowance system.
Everything is an allowance system. We're bargaining with people who are stronger and have more power than we do in order to get what we want.
So that means feminism, the way you're describing it, relies wholly, every aspect, that any kind of cherries you want to put on top, like any amenities, extra whipped cream on the feminist boat. Ultimately, you're asking, and women today are still asking, please, stronger collection of men, allow us to do X, Y, Z, right?
I think it's asking society not to hurt them. But
that's an inequality.
I'm not arguing that women are as strong as men. I'm not trying to argue that as a collection that they're equal in every aspect.
Yeah, but you said equal opportunities.
Of course.
Do women have the equal opportunity to defend or take other people's rights?
If you're talking like everything all else equal, or are we talking like they can have certain
just answer the question.
abilities to do that in terms
It's
of the
an easy
weaponry that they have, in
answer.
terms of
Well,
of the organization of society that they have? Like, I think that you're assuming that we live in a state of nature, which we don't currently live in a state of nature.
No, I still think that nature bleeds in. I know what you're saying, that we live in a state of luxury. Are you saying like decadence?
A little bit.
It's not like brutality of the wilderness, right?
Sure.
Because of men.
Because that's
Men built structures, built concrete jungles, you know? They built underground
a lot of it,
systems.
No, but a fair amount of that was
The only reason we're not in the jungle is because of men.
You do realize that a collection of men together without...
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I don't think Oliver is going to get it. I just don't think he's going to get it. He is still stuck in this feminist worldview. He is trying to, repent for his sins against the left, because again, there's allegations that came out that he flashed a girl on camera. So I guess now he's trying to make his ways around to rebrand himself and be like, look, I'm actually a defender of women. Haha. And he has to go 100% all into this. But look how stupid it makes him look and sound. It spent pretty much a little over an hour just to get him to concede that, yes, men overall are stronger than women, and with the force comes the power. Jimbob is not saying that's a good or a bad thing. He is just saying it is. And I don't know what people like Oliver, feminists like Oliver, and others can't understand that. They switch between generalities and the individual. You know, whenever it conveniences them, they go back for men and then the society. But it's not really hard to understand what Jimbob is saying, because what he is saying is absolutely 100% correct. And you could like it or you could hate it, but it is just the way it is. But what did you guys think about this debate? How do you guys think Oliver did? How do you guys think Jimbob did? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Please give this video a like if you liked it. That'll help me out a lot. If you like seeing more content like this, if you like seeing Jimbob debate, I have a whole playlist of him, as well as more whatever podcast debates and content that I think you'll enjoy. Yeah, also, too, one last thing. If you want to see the rest of this debate, like I said, it's an almost 5-hour debate. I only covered like a little over an hour of it. There's a link in the description down below where you can see the debate in its entirety.